rejuvenating a stagnant marriage. I think for me, I've realized that what you don't focus on will end up just losing track and derailing. What you don't kind of reflect on, what you don't think about constantly, you end up just letting it like be on a journey of its own. And many of us may kind of start off in a marriage and like everything is hunky dory because you are in love. There are endorphins, in biology that are there and all that stuff. But then after a while, I think every marriage goes through that period of stagnancy. But you always have to do your best to rejuvenate it. In geography, there is something called rejuvenation where a river is like slow flowing, there's no input, it begins to stink because there isn't much movement, there isn't much motion, there's nothing going on. But when it begins to rain, then new momentum comes to the water. It begins to flow, even the dirt begins to be cleared off. Why? Because there is that fresh input. And sometimes I think our marriages struggle. Why? Because it's just us and we are not interested in getting any input in. And sometimes you find a lot of people not interested in saying, hey, let's get some fresh rain. Let's give attention back to this thing that is very, very, very important. And come to think of it, marriage is such a critical part of our lives and plays such a big role in our lives. It needs to constantly have rain, and such seminars, such workshops are so important for us because it's kind of like that rain that says, hey, let's get the spotlight back, because it's easy to get into a stagnant marriage. When water is no longer flowing, it often becomes stagnant and begins to stink. I'm sure we've been in a place like that. For example, like when you go towards Campton Park, there's and you're on the R25, there is this letamunyana on the side. It's constantly smelling there, like always there's a smell. And there is a townhouse complex there. I haven't seen by a townhouse complex, it's never been full. Like most of it just doesn't have people, because the number one thing, I guess, when people go there to come check the place out, they get chowed by the smell, because nobody wants to live in a place that smells bad. Nobody wants to be part of a place that smells bad. So, and I hardly have ever gone past that place without it smelling bad.
And there's a McDonald's a few meters away.
And there is that shop a few meters away. So, come to think of it now, nobody wants to be in a marriage that is stagnant. But it takes two people to build a marriage that is rejuvenated. And to rejuvenate means, we live in a world of constant decay, so to constantly rework is important, to look back and sit down and say, hey, where are we? Why are we where we are? And can we kind of go back and check what is it that's missing? It helps. So it often needs a refreshing of some sort, which is called rejuvenation, any river or anything. So marriage can also become stagnant for various reasons. The fact that I think another thing that we constantly have a problem with is that we assume that people attend workshops because their marriages are in trouble, which is a misconception, We don't attend seminars and workshops because our marriages are in trouble. We attend them to keep our marriages rejuvenated, The one thing that I realized in my studies, especially with relationships, which is what I'm kind of like called to deal with, is most people assume that counseling doesn't work and marriage therapy doesn't work. Why? Because they only attend when things are bad. By the time they attend, things are already a mess. And that is why they will say, this psychologist thing, this marriage therapist thing doesn't work. Why? Because all along, the marriage has been stagnant, and it's becoming more and more stagnant. There are monsters now that are in that marriage river of yours. and there's no motion, to a point where it's become too poisonous to even have life in it, and by the time someone tries to come, all they can say is that there's nothing I can do. It happens. I mean, we've had I don't know whether to call it a misfortune of being told by a doctor that, guys, there's nothing we can do. This person is, the body's there, but the person is gone. And sometimes a marriage is like that, where a marriage therapist will just tell you, guys, you've let this thing go for so long, to a point where it's so difficult, and you are too, how can I put it, stubborn to even get it to work. So today we're talking about rejuvenating a stagnant marriage, and I've been trying to kind of define what a stagnant marriage is. Stagnant water is toxic and it is smelly. Nobody wants to be there, due to the bacteria and the germs that have found residence there. You can't even use it to bath. And I was telling the guys about another pastor. That pastor actually, he wanted the anointing, So he wants the anointing, and then he decides, I'm going to, there's a powerful man of God coming to visit us. So I'm going to, after the man of God baths.
Nice, isn't
Do you get the mental picture here? So they're in the same house with the man of God, and the man of God is powerful. You understand? So the man of God baths, and then, he leaves the water there and all that stuff, and so that they could clear out the water. It was during those times with the big, you still remember that big zinkish thing, so it wasn't a bathtub. So someone would have to take that thing and go chuck the water up. So the man is like, I need the anointing. It's in the water. He actually bathed with the same water. Seriously. True story. I'm telling you a true story. And he says, Jorge, that's how he got the anointing. So I don't know.
he's got the guts to tell the story.
He told the story. It's a true story, guys. There's power in these things. There's
Desperate for anointing.
Seriously, it happened. And stuff happens. So talking about smells, and there wasn't bubble bath where you can actually say, "Hore, guys," and still be in a funky marriage, a smelly marriage where nobody wants to be there. Where there's no life, and that's what we really need to kind of pray against and say, Lord, we need life in this thing. We need you to help us to bring life into this thing, and that's why we are having this session today. So, stagnant marriages are unexciting, they're joyless, they're lifeless, they're uninspiring marriages. Rejuvenating a stagnant marriage, and a stagnant marriage is just, look, every relationship has its ups and downs, and that is a very important thing to know. Very important to understand and to know. For relationships, zinama ups and downs. They are not stationary. Otherwise, then we'd be robots. Yeah. And I think we always make that assumption. For a marriage is constantly supposed to be just everything is flowing, but that's not life, and it's not reality. And maybe sometimes we see Masbegelelama movies and all that stuff. We assume that is how things are, and it's not. So when a marriage is stagnant, people enjoy it, they don't enjoy it. So it's always important for us, even when we come to that point, we need to be able to work on our marriages to a point where we get them out of stagnancy. Okay. From that point, it's a bit messy. So when a marriage is stagnant, people are not growing. That's another thing. When a marriage is stagnant, people are not growing. And so today it's basically just to refresh, for us to kind of be able to get the conversation going again, because whatever you don't talk about is probably going to spiral and have a life of its own. That's how it usually is. It will have a life of its own. The stuff that you kind of say, I'm tired of talking about it, etc. What are the things that can make a marriage stagnant? Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of them, and then we'll shut down camp. Number one, over familiarity with each other. We spend a lot of time with each other, you know. But I'm sure you've always heard of that phrase, which has and now even in your head, you even say that to yourself. Let's be honest, confess.
Yeah.
After being married to each other for a while, you do come to that point where even in your head, your partner, we all have come to that point. So I don't know if it's a demon or it's just our mind. It's a norm, yeah. It's over familiarity. You do come to a point where you become familiar with each other, and you constantly need to look for those things that keep you excited about each other, you know. So thinking you know the other person, and there is no more that you can learn from him, that's what kind of creates over familiarity also, coming to a point where you think you now have 100% knowledge of this person. But the one thing I know about people is that we are constantly evolving.
That's right.
Like, there's always something new that you're going to pick up from this person because you interact with the world, the macro environment and the micro environment. The person is constantly changing, becoming different, evolving, and that's part of life. You know, we constantly need to grow as individuals and as couples and keep each other informed of the journey that you are having of growth and change. There are certain things I used to believe in 10 years ago that I don't believe in right now. And it will be a mess for me to change certain beliefs that I have without informing my partner because we are going to clash.
Yeah.
That is where the communication part comes in. You know, there are certain things that were important back then that are not important for me at the moment when it comes to my life. And if my partner is not aware of that, it can be a problem. What is it? Because individually we are growing. Keep each other informed in terms of that there are changes that are happening to you physically, mentally. Keep each other informed of those kind of things. That's where the communication aspect comes in, you know. You know, so people are always changing, so you will not know your partner completely. And it's important for you to accept that. You will not know your partner completely. In fact, that is what keeps marriages awesome. To always have that thing out, wow, sure, like this person is really becoming better or is really growing or is really improving. You know, that's what keeps things going. People take up new interests and whatever. It's important for us to allow each other to evolve. You know, it's important to allow each other to get to discover new things about each other. So you find someone saying, but you know, why do you want to change your hairstyle? You've been doing the same hairstyle for the last 10 years. It's because I'm evolving. Like, it's because I'm evolving, and that's why I'm taking certain interests. I'm doing certain things differently from the way I'm doing them. I always tell people that if you are not willing to change, you are not ready for marriage. Because marriage in itself will change you. It has to. If it's going to be effective, that is, it will have to change you. You have to be willing to change. And I've seen that a lot of marriages don't survive. Why? Because people are not willing to change. You always hear that same conversation. And you know, so. That's the worst thing ever, because marriage in itself is meant to just change your shape and feel. So how much have you changed so far that you've been married by your spouse in your marriage? It has to change you. It has to change your outlook. It has to change how you see things. It has to change your perspective. It has to change your language. You know, it has to. The best way to explain this is that marriage has to affect you to your core. Best way. It has to affect you to your core. Otherwise, if you are still the same person that you were, then that couple evolvement is not going to happen the way it is. There's a concept called couple co-evolvement. You know?
Okay.
Couple co-evolvement. So couple being a pair. Co-evolvement. And what is couple co-evolvement? Couple co-evolvement is we are all evolving, some faster than others. We understand that. No? Sometimes you find partners like changing so quickly, it becomes such a frustration to the other person. That's where the communication thing comes in. But there are too many rapid changes. What's happening? That's where you constantly need to talk about, no, man. And then the other person will be too slow and whatever. Sometimes in couples, there will be the slower person, there will be the faster one. Be able to find each other somewhere. There are some people who are just quick. Like, I'm very quick. Like, I think, yeah, I'm just that kind of person. I'm just very quick. And my wife is just laid back. So I can wake up today and say, I'm starting a business, and because I'll wake up at 1 at night and have an idea, and I want to push it. But I have to talk to her, and then she'll like calm me down. Okay, fine, yeah. You want to start a business? Let's discuss this. Let's talk about it, and then she'll kind of make me realize, okay, it was at night. It was 12:1 at night. You understand? That's where the whole partnership thing comes in, so that you don't leave each other out. Because I can be doing 1,000 things at the same time, whether it's singing, writing books, preaching, doing leadership seminars, couple seminars. That's just me. But you need someone who's going to be there. Because with me, I wish there were like 10 me's. If there were 10 me's, I'd be very happy. Because I'd send one me to go and fix the churchyard, send another one to go sing. That's me. But now I'm one person, and then what tends to happen is that because of the fact that I'm the fast one and I'm constantly doing all these things, my body just cannot handle that. And then I just get into this funk where I'm just so exhausted. And my wife will be like, okay, just go away. Like, go find a place to go rest and whatever. And that's where the whole couple co-evolvement thing comes in. We are constantly evolving. But we need to be aware that as we evolve, we mustn't leave our spouses behind.
That's right.
And it takes me at least 7 days to get his concepts, at least.
Yes.
To get the concept and understand it. And so that's how slow I am.
And then that's where we need to kind of meet each other somewhere. Like, be patient. When you are the fast one, be patient. When you are the slow one, try and actually, make an effort. Yeah, like to catch up. Try and make that effort. It's going to take effort to get the other person. But usually, we are individually growing, but we are growing together as a couple. That's what co-evolvement is. Ne? We are individually growing. It's important as an individual also to make that effort to grow. Right. I think there's nothing as boring as being with the same person, same way, same shape, no interest, no desire to grow. That is a problem. Yeah. You understand? Like, try and, as an individual, have your own goals. This is what I want to achieve. Yeah. And then obviously you're going to have to negotiate through that plan, how with your partner, compromise, do whatever. But it's important to individually grow. And as you individually grow, involve your partner so that it becomes part of your plan as a couple to grow. I don't know if that makes sense. Ne? So we are individually growing, but we are growing together as a couple in the process also. So also saying, okay, as a couple we need to also grow, whether it's more kids, whether it's whatever, but making that thing. So this is another thing. I'm not sure if you've ever heard couples saying we grew apart, and you always hear that. We were growing, but because we never communicated our growths, and because we were at different paces, and we never spent time trying to fit this thing into the couples forum, people begin to grow apart. And that happens, a lot of times. People will tell you, but by the time we looked back, there was nothing we had in common. But did you talk about that thing, how you felt, what you wanted, and all the other stuff? It's a lot. So learn to share. I think that's the most important thing. Sharing is a very key thing. In children, nursery school, they always say sharing is caring. Yeah. So how much do you share? How much of the inner stuff that has to do with you that you can't share with anybody else do you actually share? Because time is moving, and whatever. So learn to share with each other your dreams, your goals, your plans for all aspects of your life. I think it's a key thing. What are those things that you are thinking about? They may be trivial, they may be small and whatever, you know. So being able to share those dreams helps so that the other person can make sense of where you are. Yeah. Because there's nothing as bad as like your spouse's friends knowing your spouse's dreams and plans and hopes more than you. That's painful.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's where the sharing thing comes in, where you just sit down and you get to just kind of catch up and talk about those other things. So one thing I've realized is that as spouses also, we need to kind of commit to being good friends with each other. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, I think we need to really make that commitment to say this will be my friend and this will be somebody I'm going to share with and have a caring relationship with. Friends are, I don't know, man, there's this thing about them, you know, umgan, you know, a friend is a friend. You are able to crack jokes with each other, you are able to just have fun, and you know, my wife always laughs at me, and I don't understand why, but like she just laughs. I'll say a statement and she'll just laugh, but that's what friendships are all about, you know. For her, I always tell her, you think I'm a joke, you know. But that's what, yeah, that's what relationships are all about. I'll just crack a statement and in the most serious way, and she will just burst in laughter. But those are the precious moments. Those are the precious moments that we should be creating, you know, for ourselves. To say, you know what, this is my irreplaceable partner. I don't see her. I don't think anybody can replace this kind of person because this person is my friend.
That's right.
You know, it's a friend. There's a caring, constantly caring relationship. When something happens, you actually are able to call and say, hey man, this is what happened, and whatever. Those 1 minute calls or WhatsApps or whatever, this is what's happening, and etc. are very important. So friends also are constantly adapting to one another. Adapt to one another. I think it's only fair. You know, we have to adapt to the changes that each and every person, because there's feedback coming from all over the show. You know, I've realized even physically I'm changing, physiologically I'm changing. There are certain changes that are happening to my body, and if I'm not, you know, communicating about that, also it does kind of affect what's happening, you know, with us. So the number one thing is over familiarity. I think it's important for us to constantly pray against being over familiar with each other. Basically, to a point where you're like, whatever, you know, he's crying again, or she's crying again, or he's doing this again, whatever. So we need to overcome over familiarity. I think the best way to do that is to honor each other. Honor each other. Like, just honor each other. When there's honor in the picture, it's very rare where you're going to have over familiarity. It's very rare. Why? Because you literally just honor and respect each other enough to say, I'm not going to be over familiar with this person. I'm going to honor them. I'm going to honor my spouse. I'm going to honor my husband. You know, do those things that show that you actually honor them. I think it makes sense. Number two, so over familiarity was the first one. Number two, no intimacy. And I think that one is obvious, and it's spoken about a lot of times in marriage seminars. When there's no intimacy in the picture, obviously it's going to cause your marriage to be stagnant. And intimacy is in two sections: emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy. It's a very, very important part. There are two tanks that are in a marriage. There is an emotional tank, there is the sexual tank, and all of them are important. I would even say they are the same size, and it's a very big size, you know. And both of them need to be filled, because when the emotional tank is empty, there is emotional detachment. You are just detached emotionally. You don't feel anything for each other, besides the negative emotions, of course. And it's important for us to check ourselves, to check, well, how do I feel about this person? What emotions come up when I think of this person? Because if your emotional tank is filled with negative emotions, it's going to kill your marriage. It is. So you need to go back and take out the stuff that's in the tank. I was speaking to someone and they told me, they went to the garage, and at the garage, yes, one of my pastor friends, he was supposed to come visit me. Okay. So he goes to the garage, his car is a diesel car, and he goes there and they hoy petrol in the tank. Let's just say it was almost a half-day job or more to have to empty that tank and make sure it is clean so that they could put diesel in there. And it was just a schlep because it can destroy your car. If you pull from that place, it's going to kill your engine, it's going to kill a lot of things, you're going to have to overhaul, you're going to have to... Now imagine the kind of junk we put in our emotional tanks. Because the emotional tank should be filled with positive vibes. Like love, just excitement for one another, those positive feelings. You know, what attracted you actually to your spouse is actually also like biological. The endorphins in your body, like when you were next to them, you had these goosebumps and all that stuff. You know, the endorphins, they created those emotions that were exciting. And funny enough, the reason why you married the spouse that you married is because you had this idea in your head of your perfect partner. And then this partner that you have now came close to that idea. And I'm saying close. Close. I don't think unless if really you were like convinced, but after some time you realize, I like we're close, but that's we're close, but that's so weird. That's because the picture you had is the ideal picture of the kind of partner you had. Now, it's important for you to constantly renegotiate with yourself my expectations, because we constantly hit our partner against this ideal image. And this is an ideal image. It's ideal. It's the best thing, like, in fact, superhuman. But sometimes we tend to take our partner and we bash them against this person, instead of trying to negotiate, to say, but some of these things are like unreal. They're unrealistic, and I need to renegotiate with myself, renegotiate my perception of my partner against this ideal person that I have. There are certain things you need to kind of say, look, if I keep doing this, I'm going to hurt myself because I've got too many big expectations that are probably unrealistic on some level also. And I need to kind of cool off so that life becomes easy. You find people coming to a marriage expecting to have superwoman and superman. It's not real. It's not possible. I'm not saying like obviously as you defend yourself, you must say you're expecting me to be a superwoman. No. Like obviously, try and be also available. So emotional tanks, there's also something called emotional detachment, which you have to avoid, which is where you are just not feeling anything positive for your spouse, and you create that emotional distance towards each other. And then the unfortunate thing is that the emotional tank may be filled with other things or other people. That's where the problem comes in, where now other people come in and they take over that part where you get your emotional needs met from the macro environment or the environment that's around you, whether it's TV, whether it's colleagues, whether it's people estrating or whatever. But people, there's a certain need that you have. All of us have certain emotional needs, and it's important for us to always feel them. I was listening to somebody yesterday talking about the typical African man, the fact that as an African man, you're like, Ngoskazi, I told you I love you 10 years ago. Okay. If anything had changed, I would have let you know by now. You know, and sometimes there is that typical thing. So it's always important to kind of create a certain culture in your marriage. What kind of culture do you really want? Do you want to take the African culture? And that's the conversations that we need to have with each other. Or I feel that the marriage is now becoming too African. Can we kind of make it proper? Because we are at that point where it's like, you know, and you know, you're gonna end up now giving each other high fives or whatever. So we need to constantly rework our culture, because every car always needs alignment at some point. Like, it doesn't matter how perfect the car is, because we are on earth, you hit potholes and whatever, you constantly need to go back, and it's only through conversation that you'll be able to deal with it, you know? So that's where the talking comes in. And then obviously the sexual tank, not meeting your spouse's sexual needs, distancing yourself physically has an impact on your marriage. It does. It always does. Because it creates a very big gap that is there. And filling that gap may, you know, it just needs you to be physically available for your spouse. It's a very important aspect. And that goes back obviously to the fact that I personally feel that the emotional tank and the sexual tank, it's all in the mind, honestly. Like, it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. If we can adjust the way we think when we think about sex, if we can adjust the way we think when we think about emotions, how to feel for each other, everything is in the mind. Because if your mind is adjusted properly, the right chemicals of the body will be released, and it's able to affect your marriage positively. When someone is teaching on this thing of intimacy, they always say the best sex toy is your mind. All these gadgets also are just additions. But if your mind is not proper, if it's not in the right place, then these two tanks are going to be a mess. It's all in the mind. If you want to be sexual or sexy in a marriage, it's all in the mind. It's either you have certain blockages, or there are certain things that are in your mind that you've made a decision over, that are going to block you from having emotional tanks filled and sexual tanks filled, and that's how it is. You know, that's how it always is. So the state of your mind is important when it comes to the issue of intimacy. Honestly, your mind, how you think, how you pursue these things. It's the battleground is in your mind. So if your partner says my emotional tank is not being filled, or my sexual tank is not being filled, the issue is for you to go back and reflect, mentally, how do I think about emotions? How do I think about my feelings? How do I think about my brain? Sometimes you go back and you realize maybe the problem is the fact that I'm not happy with my body, or I'm not happy with whatever, or I'm stressed. You know, everything is in the mind. When you are stressed, obviously your libido goes down and all that stuff. It doesn't affect you positively. So everything is in the It's in the mind. Go back and say, how's my state of mind at the moment? Because many of the things, like when it comes to even abusive relationships and all that stuff, if you can look back, before we say demons, before we shout demons, there is a demon in my marriage and all that stuff. State of mind. Just state of mind. Just your mind. What state of mind do you have? And if you could go back and reflect, you would realize that there's something up here that's not right. Whether it's exhaustion, tiredness, your perceptions on marriage, your perceptions on emotions, whatever, there's something in the mind that's going on. Whether it's exhaustion, burnout, because did you know that most of the stuff that happens to your body, it starts in your mind?
True.
There are things called psychosomatic diseases. Those are diseases that begin in the mind. Like, check, and they can see, but this thing just originated from a bad mind. You know, about 4 years ago, I got sick, and was it 2013, 2014? And when I went to the doctor said, "You are too stressed. That's why you're sick."
Sure.
You are too stressed. You are exhausted, and that's why you're sick. That's why your body's giving in. Plain and simple. So, and it all began in the mind. How I was struggling to cope. My coping mechanisms were responsible also, and everything was in the mind for why I was not coping and why I was not performing in areas of my life that were important. That's why our marriages need to be comfortable. I'm not saying comfort zones. Let's create marriages that are comfortable enough so that when your spouse comes in, that he's not poisoned, but he feels comfortable. So that he's relaxed or she's relaxed to be able to say, sure, I'm not leaving work and work is stressful, and I'm coming home and home is stressful. It affects your mind, it affects your body, it affects areas of your life, you know. So if I come back home and it's stagnant, even at home, at work, it's stagnant, it kills the vibe. It really kills the vibe. That's why you find a lot of men, basema barin, like they spend most of their time in the bars, drinking, etc. Why? Because they know if I get back home. In fact, even as he walks home, Susie. Susie. You know, yeah, if you follow him the whole way. True, yeah, he's talking alone. You will hear him talking about Susie. Susie will, you know, I'm tired of Susie. I've had enough of Susie. You know, and if you actually stop him and you ask him what, because he's so strong, he will actually tell you. Yeah. Susie has a problem. I remember last I had to live to one of my neighbors, and it's unfortunate because he was drunk and he was walking along the road and he said, no, I'm going to drop us somewhere, and only to realize the place he wanted me to drop him at was in Tavern. It was so unfortunate, but it's the reality of what's happening. Is it comfortable? The question today becomes, is our marriage comfortable? I'm not talking about the home, I'm talking about the marriage. There's a big difference between the home and the marriage. Is the marriage comfortable? Those are things we need to talk about when we live here. That's why it's important. I think when we are done with this, maybe overnight or over coffee or over lunch, let's go through the notes, talk about stuff. Just spend a day just talking, you know. And not to be, what do you call it, combative. Not to be combative, but to try and find each other. You understand what I'm saying? The reason why a lot of people don't attend marriage seminars is because they're thinking, afterwards we're going to go through the notes and then he's going to be nagging me the whole time and just getting upset when I raise certain subjects. That's the truth. True story. They don't attend because they know we might as well just let it be on autopilot and let it be stagnant. Honestly. I can tell you that some people that were meant to be here, but the one partner just refused. Just said, I'm not going. Or the other person is like, what's the point? I'm going to go alone and then I'm going to come back and it's not going to work anyways because I've got all this knowledge and it's not going to work. That's how it is. You know. So the intimacy part, guys, goes back to really saying the best sex toy, sex tool is your mind. Cultivate a proper attitude towards intimacy in your mind already, whether it's emotional or sexually, and it will help. Mind. That's all. Number 3, oversimplifying the challenges. Oversimplifying the challenges in our marriage can cause your marriage to be stagnant. There are many times when we downplay certain things that our spouses tell us about. We downplay them. We just don't take them seriously. Your spouse tells you, no, I need attention. And we just downplay it. We just oversimplify it. Maybe it's just being too much, you know. We oversimplify that challenge. I don't know if I'm making sense. We downplay what our spouse is. If your spouse keeps telling you the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over, then it means that this thing is important. It's being emphasized. That's what it's called. If it keeps on coming back, and if you continue to oversimplify, there'll come a time when your spouse will not talk about it ever again. And it's simply because of the fact that they're just tired. And they've found other methods of meeting that need. And that can even complicate your relationship even further. So let's do our best not to oversimplify the challenges that our marriages face. Whether it's money, whether it's sex, whether it's emotional needs, whatever it is, find a way to make sure that you don't oversimplify it. Because it's going to be more difficult to try and fix something when it's damaged. Prevention is better than cure, that's what they say. So oversimplifying the challenges that we are facing, not taking the feedback or the criticism you get from your partner seriously, can affect your marriage. So if your spouse keeps saying, but I don't like the way you talk to my mother, I don't like the way you talk to my father, I don't like the way you talk to the kids, things like that, and you're like, man, whatever. That response in itself is a problem. It's key for us to look back and to say, but this person really has been affected by this thing, and have I given it the attention it deserves? There are certain themes, if you can check, that certain topics that keep rising in your marriage, and you need to kind of jot them down and say, how much effort have we made? Have we progressed from the last time when we had this kind of discussion? I don't know if it makes sense. So how much have we progressed from this thing? Because this thing has been such a sore thumb in our marriage. Whether it's one spouse being arrogant, I remember another marriage where the guy kept wanting all the attention, like, he'd be the one who's in front of the mirror, making sure he's fine. So when they're taking photos, the guy's taking more selfies, than seriously, and he'll go to the hair salon, make sure his hair is fine and proper and prim, and do manicures, pedicures. True story. Yeah, a man, yeah. And the woman was so concerned. It's like, where do I feature here? Where do I feature? Because it looks like we are both pretty, where do I feature, and it's a problem, obviously, because that's called vanity. And vanity is when you're narcissistic, basically. You're always looking at yourself and stuff. So take them for what they are. If it's a problem, it's a problem. Don't oversimplify it. If your partner says this is a problem, don't say they are overreacting. Even if you feel they are overreacting, don't say it. Because once you say it, you are creating a world now of its own. If your partner has raised it before and keeps raising it, then it is a problem. If you don't believe that it is a problem, then ask two more mature outsiders to come and to tell you. Like, sometimes it's good to get feedback, just to say, let me find someone who's kind of more mature, who, this is what my partner is saying, what do you think? And then obviously that person needs to have enough knowledge on it to help you guys, and then he'll be able to tell you, yeah, it is a problem. And at least then, if someone who's objective tells you, then, it would not help to be stubborn, because then you've been told that this is not as simple as you make it out to be. I don't know if it makes sense. There are things called stressors. Stressors, STRESSORS, stressors. And in a marriage, as a couple, there are things called stressors that impact your marriage. There are two types of stressors: internal stressors, external stressors. In a marriage, there are internal stressors, there are external stressors. Internal stressors are stressors that come from within the individuals or within the couple setup itself. There are stressors that just come. What am I talking about there? I'm talking about personality clashes, when your personalities are not the same, bad attitude and bad behavior and bad habits. Those are internal things. They're internal stressors that can affect your relationship as a couple. If maybe, for example, you're a spouse and as a couple, you always burp, you're always just burping and out loud. I think we all know what burping is. So you'll be sitting there and or I'm using trivial examples, and then you just like poking your nose, and eating what's inside, and then after that you want to be kissed by your spouse. True story. And then afterwards you want to handle your spouse and you want to kiss your spouse. Now those are internal stressors for the other person. But and then obviously there are things like your past, your background. Those are internal stressors. That can affect your marriage. Clashing temperaments, there are things called temperaments that can affect your marriage. Differences in opinion, differences in life's direction, that can be stressors also. They can stress your marriage. And I'm not sure if maybe we could even say like physical challenges that are there. They can even be stressors, whatever, is there. I think it can even be internal stressors. For example, people that are diabetic, it affects your performance. It affects how you respond. People that have heart problems, it affects the relationship because that person they become slower. There are certain things they cannot do. They don't have a lot of energy. It's important to communicate. Sometimes you'll think someone is overreacting. I can't expect my wife to go and to run after Butch when Butch is out there. She's pregnant. It will not make sense. I as tired as I will be at the time, I can't expect her to go and fetch Butch. I'm going to have to do what? Man up and go run after Butch and sort Butch out. I don't know if it makes sense. So sometimes you tend to think your spouse is being not understanding when they are actually going through challenges of their own. And that's where the communication thing comes in, where we have to talk. This is not happening the way it's supposed to. Why? You are always out of energy. Why? It seems like you are here, but you are not here. Why? And then obviously you need to communicate. Don't say, what do you mean I'm here, not here? Because then that's big fighting. Discuss, talk about it. Explain to me what's happening. Why are you always tired, etc. Because our jobs are very demanding. Yeah. All of us here, I think, if you are employed or unemployed or whatever, your job is probably so demanding. It taxes your body, taxes your mind. Stuff happens and whatever. It becomes very difficult to cope with. It's important to understand each other. So those are internal stressors. Then there are external stressors also. External stressors are forces outside the marriage that exert pressure into it. Have you ever noticed when you're stressed how you behave? You're tired, you become a bit depressed, you're always worried and whatever, and that's what a marriage can become like when all these stressors we don't have enough coping mechanisms. And I think our marriages should be a place where we should be part of the solution towards the stressors. I should be able to come home and have a spouse who will just make sure that I'm okay. So things like the economic downturn, the fact that economically the world is going through a bad place, it affects marriage because you go out there and you see another couple that's doing very well. I had a conversation with someone recently about someone who was just not happy that they went to go visit a friend and the friend was doing very well. Yeah. And the person was just not happy. The person was just sad. I'm going through a time where I'm struggling and these guys are doing very well. Like very, very, very well. The people are, and it becomes external stressors to your relationship. It can affect you guys because then you look at your partner, you're not performing. You're not being a woman, you're not being a man, you're not doing this. Have you ever seen how Mukete dresses or hello? Yeah. Those kind of things can really affect your marriage. Have you seen Mang Mang? how they behave, the car they drive, this and that, and the house they live in, and this person is studying this and whatever. We are all on different levels.
That's right.
And our race is not the same. And our focus is not the same. You know. As long as your passion for what matters is there, it's key. So these guys were getting back together, and it became a very bad time, because as they met, it was kind of like ticking, you know, this person has this, I don't have it, this person has this, I don't have it. To a point where even one of them said something like, yo, like, my husband is so slow, you know, and you can't say that in public, you know. You can't say that in front of people. You can't say this person is not providing for my needs in front of your friends. It's not right. You know, you are down. You are putting even more pressure in terms of your spouse and stuff. And then you go out there, you get yourself in debt and whatever. And that's not what this thing is about. I don't know if you know what I'm saying. So it's important sometimes, guys, you know, to pace yourself, and if need be, avoid setting yourself up for competition. I don't know if that adds up. Sometimes it's possible to set yourself up for competition where you're constantly trying to keep up when God has called you to an absolutely different race. And I'm not saying be relaxed. Believe me, I'm not relaxed at all. I don't like the fact that, you know, we are still trying to make ends meet here and there. I'm doing my best to make sure that, you know, there's income coming into the house, etc. And if your partner is doing their best, let them down easy. If you can see, all right, so you're going to have a partner who's got heart problems, high BP, and then you have more problems to deal with. High blood pressure and whatever, you know. And you don't need that, you know. Keep focus on each other. So, you know, we live in a time where people are losing jobs and whatever. It's common these days to hear someone say, no, I don't have a job anymore. You know, and those are external stressors that we need to be aware of. You know, even our in-laws can become part of the problem. So it's important for us to understand that those are external pressures that we need to shield our marriage against, help our marriage to cope, because they affect you. When your spouse was not treated nicely at work, when he comes back home, it's not going to be okay, obviously, you know. So as a spouse, you need to be able to say, how do I help them cope, you know, and not be a dictionary or an encyclopedia or Google for them. Just understand how they feel. Number 4, of the things that can cause your marriage to be stagnant, communication problems, bad communication, not communicating at all about anything. And I've noticed that even with my wife and I, like, we can talk about a lot of other things around us, but not our marriage. Like a lot of stuff, who's doing what, what's doing what's what. But when it comes to, like, let's sit down, let's talk about where are we as a couple. It's easy to talk about a lot of other things, but let's make a deliberate effort to say, let's talk about us. Just you, me. Let's talk about us. Like, because we talk about a lot of things. Sunday, we do. Like, let's be honest. We do that most of the time, but when you're thinking, that awkward conversation about us, you know, and that's why these kind of sessions are important, so that we can at least have that time where we can say, hey, when are we going to have that time where we go through those notes and talk about us? You know, important. So when we leave here, at least for the next week, like, make that 1 or 2 hours, 3 hours of saying, can we talk about us? Just us. And where we are going. Us. Me, you, not in-laws, not bunzu, not whoever, like us, you, me. And how we feel about each other. And whatever. Okay, so open lines of communication. Try and deal with unresolved issues as much as possible. I'm not going to say as soon as possible, but as much as possible. Try and deal with unresolved issues. Because whatever you don't deal with will deal with you later. It will deal with you later. It always does. You know, that's why you see the high divorce rates that we have. It's just unresolved issues. In marriage, you get what you negotiate for. So there's no negotiation without communication. I'm going to move on from there. Number 5, being on autopilot. Being on autopilot is another reason why we have stagnant marriages. I'm not sure if we know, like airplanes, most of the time they drive themselves, actually. The pilots are just sitting there chatting. True story. The airplanes, like you are sitting there, you are happy. Hallelujah, that thing is pushing itself. Like. The guy is just at the helm when the thing goes up. Once it levels out, the guys can go drink coffee, like they're sitting there on Google. You guys are sitting there and whatever. They're updating their Facebook statuses. That's called autopilot. And then they'll pay attention when it says ding, 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 whatever, there's turbulence or whatever, then they'll get back and they'll sit down. That's autopilot. But it's so amazing that even in our marriages can be an autopilot, where the thing is just running itself. And I don't think that's God's design for marriage. We are meant to run our marriages. The marriage shouldn't be on autopilot. Autopilot, the plane flies itself and the pilots are just chilling. I believe that marriage is a lifelong project. So a marriage on autopilot is a marriage in which the partners are no longer actively directing or controlling it. I'll say that again. A marriage that's on autopilot is a marriage in which the partners are no longer actively directing or controlling it. It's just controlling itself. So if the marriage feels I'm going to be unhappy today, you guys are just covered by an atmosphere of unhappiness. So chilling or being relaxed is not an option in marriage. Too relaxed. Letting yourself go, in other words, that's what I'm talking about. Like letting yourself go, where you just don't care what your spouse feels, what your spouse thinks. It just doesn't matter. That's autopilot. Like it doesn't matter. Then you are in the red zone, becoming too comfortable, not making an effort at all. You know, those are things that can become a problem. When a plane is on autopilot, the pilots focus on other things. So be careful of things that draw your attention away from your spouse. I'm not just going to say from your marriage, but from your spouse. I think it becomes clearer when I say your spouse instead of your marriage. Be careful of things that take your attention away from your spouse, that take your focus away from your spouse. You know, because then obviously you are neglecting your post. The reason why we're here today is so that we could talk about those things, so that we constantly bring ourselves back to center. When a car is veering off the road, we need to bring it back to center because it's driving itself, and we need to bring it back. How do we do that? Communication. That's all. Talk. Like, don't allow the thing to be on autopilot. That's where the problems are going to be like. You know, that's where the things are going to be like. But sometimes you find people not talking because they know when they start talking, there's going to be attitude, there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth and brimstone and fire. Why? Because we don't know how to deal with what you call conflict when we don't agree. You know, and it's important for us to learn how to cope with not agreeing with each other. How do we discuss things that are thorny issues in our marriage? That's why people just end up not even discussing it, because they know if I discuss it, it will overreact, dishes are going to be flying all over, you know, food is not going to be cooked nicely, someone is not going to do this or whatever, so they just don't talk. You know, it's about how you handle even those things so that communication lines open, because nobody wants to, who's going to throw himself in the line of fire when they know that there is a line of fire? Like, honestly speaking, I know that there's going to be a bad reaction already. Why would I even start? So I'd rather just die slowly and just find other ways of handling what I have to handle. But if the person knows what I'm safe with my spouse, yes, we will have conflict, and it's going to be that, it's part of life. but how we discuss, how we maneuver around those things is productive. It's kind of like sitting on a board meeting table and discussing things that don't make sense and coming out okay. I saw this other picture of these two guys who went to their boss for a meeting in a boardroom, and then they both leave and they're like, oh, what a great meeting, and the office is a mess, and the boss is on the floor and the boss is crying. The two colleagues, the subordinates, come out feeling victorious, but their boss is down there weeping and crying, and the boardroom is in a mess, and sometimes I think some people just know that's what's going to be left behind. That's why they don't even want to raise issues that are a problem anymore. And that can be the worst thing, because once there is that silence in a marriage of there is a problem, but I'm not going to discuss it, that's the worst place. I don't know if that makes sense, because they already know what's going to happen. But if we are mature enough to be able to handle those things, then we should be able to steer our marriages out of autopilot to a place where we are both co-pilots and we are steering this thing in that destination that we want it to go to. And that's God's ultimate desire for marriage, for us to be co-pilots and steer this thing in the right direction. And co-pilots really work best through communication. Like when you're in that cockpit, you tell your partner, look, I'm tired. You tell your partner, look, I'm disillusioned, I'm frustrated, I'm this, I'm that. That conversation is a very important one. So we spoke about how many things? We spoke about 5 things that can help to get our marriages out of stagnancy. 1, learning not to be over familiar with each other. 2, making sure that we deal with the intimacy issues, where we fix our mindset on how our marriages should be like sexually and emotionally. 3, we need to make sure that we don't oversimplify the challenges that are brought on the table. 4, we need to make sure that we communicate well and be able to deal with the conflict that is there. 5, we need to make sure that we don't find ourselves at autopilot where the marriage is driving itself and we are inactive in the process because we are too comfortable and we've let ourselves go and we haven't made that extra effort to meet each other's needs. I think those are just some of the stuff that I was thinking, just to introduce them to us. So the number one thing basically that I wanted to open up here, let's talk about us. That's all. Let's talk about us. So when you leave here, I know you want to talk about what you're going to eat tonight and what the kids need to do, how money needs to be spent, what you want to do at work, but maybe give time to talk about you, spouse, and you. There's this thing going on now on Facebook called the Love Challenge. It's quite an exciting thing where 7 days you put a photo of your friend. How many of you did it? I'm not sure if anybody did it. Yeah. Both Katie, they are in the network right now.
Finished the challenge.
You see? So it's quite an exciting thing where marriage is on the spotlight. You put a photo of your spouse for 7 days. Those are things I think that we desperately need.
Yes.
Honestly, we desperately need, because the idea of marriage now is actually not supported by society.
Yeah.
It's not. It's being destroyed, it's being messed up. In fact, there are some people who are saying the idea of a man and a woman together in this thing called the concept of marriage, it's actually not necessary to build society, of which God biblically had put marriage as the one way that we can build a society.
That's right.
Now, if there are other models that are being brought out there, obviously now we are going counterculture, because the culture out there is a culture that's saying this thing is not necessary. And so we need to stand up and build the best marriages we can ever build and use whatever methods we can to say my marriage won't be on autopilot. Because just in closing, there are cars now that are called automatic cars. There's a company called Tesla in America that creates self-driving cars. Google has created a self-driving car. Tesla has already got self-driving cars. I think a lot of the luxury cars are now building self-driving cars. They park them. In fact, some cars now park themselves. They are already out there in the market. So people that struggle with reverse parking and whatever, you just press that button and you just sit there and the car parks itself. What a blessing. Now and the car parks itself. Yeah, the cars now, there are cars that actually do that. I know that the latest 7 Series does it. So the Tesla has created, and they are selling cars that drive themselves. You actually just sit and the car drives itself. Recently there's been a debate because there have been 3 accidents that have happened with those cars. And because they were saying these cars are accident proof, basically. So the owner of one of the cars actually wrote a letter to them telling them about some of the challenges. So there's a debate between machine and human, because the human says, I didn't do anything wrong. The machine says, I didn't do anything wrong. You know? So there is that debate of how far can we take autopilot. I know we are trying to make money. I know we are trying to do all these things. But let's make sure that we get back to what's important. Make time for love. You know, as you are writing your own love story, make time for love. Make time to talk about us, just us. I beg you, for the next 3 days or so, don't let the 3 days pass without you having that conversation about us. Where are we? Where are we going? And not just raising complaints, because that's irritating. But at least have some positives. You know, your eyebrows look nice. Something. It shouldn't just be about us is wrong, us, why aren't we happy, why aren't we having sex, whatever. No, just talk. Your lips are shaping okay, you know, stuff. That's positive at least. Balance. You know, I teach about something called an argumentative report in English. And an argumentative report, though it may have a topic, it has positives and negatives. It balances. You can't always be seeing negative. There's nothing that irritates me like people who are just pessimists. You know, it irritates you. You can't always be seeing negative. Then that shows that your mind has a problem. There must be something positive, you know, about your spouse. When we talk about us, let's not just talk about what's negative. Let's also talk about what's positive, what's working. Amen? I hope you got something today.